Hey, beautiful soul. You're listening to the Rising into Mindful Motherhood podcast, your weekly dose of fertility wisdom. I'm your host, Dr. Katie Wood. I'm a barefoot mama bear, pharmacist, and integrative fertility coach. This is your go-to podcast for all things to naturally nourish your fertility, embody womb healing, and reclaim your feminine power to accelerate your path to pregnancy. My expert guests and I will be having intentional conversations to discuss the many facets of a thriving, fertile foundation, natural wellness, and how we grow and transform as women on our journey to motherhood. So let's dive in, shall we? Hello. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode. And I just kind of wanted to jump on really quickly before we jump right into the episode and just share a little bit about what you're going to hear. So in this episode, I interview one of my amazing clients and her success story. And what I really love about her story is they had to actually overcome both male and female obstacles on their fertility journey, and yet they were still able to conceive naturally. And it's just a beautiful story of resilience and persistence. And I can't wait for you to hear about everything, because really going from a 7 to 9 day luteal phase to becoming pregnant in a matter of just a few cycles is such an accomplishment. And Dori and I worked on this together. We utilized my confident conception method, and it works. I mean, it works quickly too. Like, it doesn't have to take a long time. And what this really entails is practical strategies like really optimizing your nutrition, tailoring your supplements, and then also doing the energy work, that inner work to make that deep connection within yourself. So there's no question, there's no doubt, there's no fear, there's just trust and surrender in leaning back and being open to receiving and healing past traumas so you can create more space for baby to come in and create an optimal flow of our life force energy. So I wanted to share with you that where Dori and I worked together was she was a member in my Confident Conception membership, and she also took advantage of some one-on-one containers with me. And I definitely feel that that's where things accelerated. That is where we collapsed time, is working one-on-one together, but then still having that very close-knit community and support that comes with the Confident Conception membership. So I'm going to be dropping the link below to the membership. If you have been on your fertility journey, if you have been told that you can't get pregnant naturally, that the odds are against you, I want you to know that we've heard this before. Myself and my clients have heard this before, yet by following my confident conception method, we have been able to surpass and basically take down those obstacles and not accept someone's opinion as our truth. So I hope you enjoy this episode. Thanks so much for tuning in. Hello and welcome to Rising into Mindful Motherhood. This episode, I'll be talking with one of my clients, Dori. She was on her fertility journey for 1 year and 8 months with her husband before finally getting pregnant. She is 15 weeks as of yesterday. She experienced a short luteal phase and struggled with navigating the medical system and getting the care that she needed and deserved. So in this episode, we'll be discussing the obstacles that she and her partner faced and how they overcame them to finally conceive. So welcome, Dori. I'm so excited to have you on the podcast to share your inspiring fertility journey with us.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Absolutely. So let's just dive right in. So when you and your husband first decided let's start our family. Did you have any expectations going into that?
So I definitely thought we were going to get pregnant, if not the first try, then at least within the first few cycles. Like I had no doubts, super confident, like, oh, this is it. It's going to happen. I hope we're ready. And yeah, I think we were very surprised when it did not happen right off.
Yeah. So how did that feel when it didn't happen, either the first cycle or maybe, let's say, 3 to 4 cycles in?
It felt very discouraging. It felt like, I don't know, I just kept asking, like, why? Like, what are we doing wrong? Like, you know, but I think a lot of disappointment mostly.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think that that's so common, and I experienced that as well. Like, I remember we started trying in November and thinking like, "I'm gonna be announcing at Christmas that we're pregnant," and yeah, we just put so much pressure on ourselves in the situation. I feel like that when it doesn't happen, it's like, "Oh, what the heck? Why is that not happening right now? Like, what's wrong with me? Something must be wrong, or the reason why it's not happening." So, when would you say you first sought out support from your provider, and were they able to give you any useful help?
So I followed kind of the guidelines or advice that everyone shares, don't see your doctor if you're under 35 or up until a year of trying.
Mhm.
So I did wait. I think I waited just 11 months. I couldn't quite wait that 12-month mark, but I got really close. And so I had reached out and scheduled an appointment to check in on it because it had been close to a year. And just a few months before that, I had, realized that I have a short or had a short luteal phase. So that is, I think, another reason why I was prompted to not wait quite the year because I it came to my attention that, short luteal phase can affect your ability to get pregnant. So I scheduled the appointment with the women's health in my area. And she was helpful as far as doing that first round of testing of things. She said, we're going to test and make sure that you are ovulating. And, we talked about my husband and, how he plays a part in it. So we went ahead and he did a semen analysis as well. She did brush off the luteal phase concern that I had. She said that that's nothing to worry about. She said, we'll check to make sure you're ovulating. And if that's the case, then there's no need to worry about it.
Mm.
So I felt good to be taking that first step of testing just to see if I was ovulating, to check in on my husband. And so, yeah, I did feel a little off about her kind of disregarding the short luteal phase, but I think I was just so happy to start any sort of testing that I was like, whatever, like we're doing this. So, and from there, we did learn that I was ovulating. That's what my test results showed. And as I mentioned with you, my husband's semen analysis came back. His sperm count was low and they were slow. I forget the medical terms for those, but that is what we found. And, in talking with my doctor, I did let her know, she asked me quite a few questions about my husband and about me. And so I did tell her that my husband was using cannabis at the time. And she let me know that can really affect sperm quality, which we had no idea. And so he did stop using. And so after 2 months of that, of not using, he retested and his sperm were in normal range for both. I don't know exactly what those numbers were. I never saw them, but it was like, wow, okay, that's all it took was 2 months and he's good to go. So yeah. And I know you asked me a question at the beginning of this, and I don't know if
No,
I've
you
answered that.
you totally did. You totally did. And there's so many things to really kind of touch on. And one thing I definitely want to talk about is the fact that you didn't necessarily know that a short luteal, until you were much further into trying. And that was something that I struggled with just in general, and I think a lot of women struggle with is understanding our menstrual cycles, like having a firm, solid foundation of understanding our fertility cycles. And I think that sadly that comes from like a lack of education. Like, I don't know. The only thing I really remember learning in sex ed or whatever that class was called was like, don't get pregnant or your life will end. Like that's all I really remember. And
Mhm.
maybe our minds were honestly too immature to really comprehend a menstrual cycle. And I don't remember if you were on birth control, but I know for me I was on birth control. So
Mhm.
really like such a huge disconnection from a natural flow of our menstrual cycles.
Yeah, and I was on birth control for 13 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, I feel like I guess I must have started out young on it, but at the time it was just normal and appropriate and everyone was on birth control and it did serve its purpose, right? It like, I wasn't ready to start trying for pregnancy, but it was the same thing that you just said. It was like all through high school sex ed was if you have sex, you will get pregnant and your life will be over. It's like, oh, okay.
Yes, yes. So I think, yeah, just highlighting that it's such a missed opportunity, I think, for just telling people, okay, you're under 35, go have at it for a year, and then we can talk because that could have been at least some foundational education that you could have very easily received in like 15 minutes. I feel like in a consultation, just very quick about nutrition, lifestyle, like here's what you need to understand about your cycle, and then kind of letting you go do your thing. But instead, 11 months went by and then that's a really long time of I know probably a lot of disappointment, a lot of frustration, maybe even some tears and just like added stress to your overall life that was unnecessary for you to go through that. So I'd like to touch on that one, I'm happy to hear that at least your doctor was willing to do some testing and that they did recommend that he have some testing done too. Because I feel like a lot of times that doesn't happen and they just kind of want to push you off to a fertility specialist. So I'm glad that that happened. One thing I'm not a huge fan about is the fact that she shrugged off your luteal phase. So how long was your luteal phase, if you can remember?
Yeah, so it was spot on. So let's see. Started trying to conceive and after 4 months, I was like, okay, we need to start tracking ovulation because this isn't happening as quickly as we thought. So we must just not be timing it right. So I started tracking ovulation and just watching it. And then it was about 4 months of tracking ovulation when I first came across that fact of if your luteal phase is less than 10 days, then that's just not a long enough luteal phase. So, and that's when I was like, oh, shoot. So I looked back on my history and it was like, okay, 9 days spot on every month. And that continued. I was pretty spot on with starting, my menstrual cycle 10 days after ovulation. I could always count on it. And then it's interesting because as soon as my husband's sperm analysis came back normal, I think it was either that month or the month after, my luteal phase got even shorter. It
Mhm.
was 7 days. And yeah, I was just shocked and frustrated. Right. And at the same time, my period started to get really painful. They had always been uncomfortable, but at that point, it was like debilitating. It was like there is something not right here. My body is trying to tell me something. And so, yeah, so it was on average 9 days. And then after it must have been a year and 2 months at that point of trying, my luteal phase was even shorter.
Yeah, I can imagine that that was disheartening and frustrating, especially after feeling like, okay, you finally have your husband's puzzle piece kind of figured out, and then it's like, oh, no, curveball. Now we have an even shorter luteal phase. But yeah, ideally, we want the luteal phase to be 10, 11, 12 days to give the embryo sufficient time to implant. So it's a little concerning to me that she kind of brushed that off because there were some things that you could do to support a healthier luteal phase. But So I know that we started, working together, and one of the things that we used was a test called Prove Complete, which
Mm-hmm.
can test your FSH, LH, one of the estrogen metabolites, and PDG, which is a progesterone metabolite. And one of the things that we found was that your estrogen was actually low, and then also your progesterone was low. Like it was showing progesterone levels were so low that it was kind of like it didn't necessarily meet their criteria to say that it was a successful ovulation. So what would you say? Because I know once we finally got those results, we were like, okay, I knew that I wanted you to really support your egg quality and support basically hormone production. What would you say are like the top three things that we implemented in the fall that you feel were helpful?
First, I would say practicing, the things that the glucose goddess on Instagram. I know her name is Jess. I forget how to pronounce her last name. And I know that she has some books out, but following her and just practicing those techniques of balancing blood sugar. So I have not ever had any blood sugar issues, as far as I knew. But through all of this, it was like I realized learning from you and I ended up speaking with another doctor, my PCP, just because I had an annual physical. And he mentioned her as well. And so, yeah, so just paying attention to my blood sugar, something I hadn't really done before. But in hindsight, like, wow, I was really like, I would start out my day with a fruit smoothie with no fat in it or protein, no yogurt or anything. And just like eating high carb things on an empty stomach. So definitely that I think helped. I would say the second thing would be probably the energy work that we had done. And we did implement that or started working on that, I think, around the same time.
Mhm.
And so just leaning into that, paying attention to my energy, really diving into that work. And the third thing I would say, I can't help but think played a part would be the fertility booster that I started taking. So that would be my top three.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am so intrigued by the balancing your blood sugar. So what would you say were the biggest changes you made? It sounded to me like maybe you started focusing on more protein and fat, but you tell me in the audience what that looked like.
Yeah. So definitely more protein and fat. Prior to all of that, I love fruit and I still love fruit and I still eat a lot of it. But prior to learning what that can do, I just ate so much fruit. I did get some veggies, but not really a lot of protein. And looking back, almost no fat without even realizing it. So I ended up moving away from the smoothie breakfast, but for a while to kind of just make that transition, I started to put yogurt or avocado in that smoothie. I also started using protein powder and incorporating that into those smoothies and, anywhere else that I could. And yeah, just making sure I wasn't starting out my day with a sweet breakfast, but starting out with something savory and making sure when I do eat that apple, pair it with almonds or peanut butter or stuff like that. So yeah, it was quite a transition, but now I can't even imagine it any other way. And I still get my fruit.
Yeah, exactly. It's very small, minor tweaks where you can still enjoy the things that you love, but in a healthier way that supports your body. Because, yeah, fat, like healthy fats, cholesterol is like the backbone of hormone production. So that must have been a really big missing piece for you. And starting off your day within 1 hour of waking with protein, that's going to help, your cortisol levels, your hormone levels, your hunger levels, just so many benefits of doing that and stabilizing your blood sugar, which is very important for fertility. So I'm just so happy to hear that the transitions went smoothly. And I do want to mention that making those changes, I can only imagine are now helping you in your pregnancy as well, because protein and fat are definitely protein for sure is required. They're like building blocks for baby in your ever-changing body. So definitely amazing changes to create before you get pregnant. So that's awesome.
Absolutely. And yeah, it wasn't, like you said, it wasn't an overnight thing where I just woke up and did everything differently. It was gradual and finding a way that worked for me to get all of it to where I needed to be.
Beautiful. So I want to touch on the cycle that you actually conceived because it's a little mind blowing.
Mhm.
But I think it just goes to show definitely the beauty of energy work and really building that connection with yourself because there's almost not really a good medical reason to explain what happened,
Mhm.
how you conceive that cycle. So basically, Dori was doing another prove complete. And I remember you sharing with me it actually told me to stop testing my PDG levels. I think it didn't want you to even test on 10 days past ovulation because your progesterone levels were so low, it told you that you didn't ovulate that cycle. However, your BBT was staying
Mhm.
steady. And I remember you saying, like, what is going on? And we just had to trust and wait and see what happened. And then I couldn't believe when you messaged me, like, here's a positive pregnancy test. Like, what the heck just happened? I mean, the only thing I can think of is maybe the proof test, it was like a bad lot. I don't really know, but
Mhm.
something miraculous happened that cycle. So, like, how did all of that feel for you? Were you in just disbelief or what was coming up for you?
Absolutely in disbelief it took days before I was like really not in disbelief anymore. So yeah, I remember tracking my cycle and realizing that my estrogen was like at a normal level. I was like, wow, like this is great. My change in diet, like all this work I've been doing is clearly working because my hormones are getting to a better level. This is great. And I still didn't think I was going to conceive that cycle. I just thought, wow, I'm headed in the right direction. And so, yeah, and I remember feeling really discouraged and disappointed when the proof test told me that I didn't ovulate. And
Mhm.
then, as you know, like you said, very confused because my basal body temperature was saying otherwise. So I was like, okay, one of these is not right. I don't know which one it is, but absolutely just leaning into, I just have to wait this out. I just have to kind of see where this goes, count those days on that 10 days past when I think I ovulated. If I get my period, then I know that I ovulated. And if not, then maybe I didn't ovulate. So, yeah, I just kept an eye on that. 10 days went by, 11 days. On that 12th day, past when I thought I ovulated, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to take a test just because, just to rule it out. That's really what I thought I was doing. And yeah, like you said, I took the test and I was in just such disbelief that I sent it to you. Like, is this a positive? Am I seeing things? Like, but also so relieved and excited. I mean, there was that little bit of nervousness that was like, okay, this progesterone was clearly so low. Like,
Mhm.
can I be excited about this? Like, is this going to take? Is this going to keep? And I really just had to lean into trusting what was happening and, continuing to do my meditation and just kind of lean into it. And here we are, 15 weeks.
Yes, you said that so beautifully. Thank you. And I have to ask, like, did you have to supplement it with any progesterone?
No, I
Yeah,
have not taken any progesterone.
that is amazing and wild. And it like, oof, it's crazy. Like, it was just a beautiful thing. It really was. And I was kind of like just really praying and rooting for you. Like, okay, this has got to stick through. And here you are, week 15, like really making it past that big point. And it's just so happy for you. I'm so happy for you. And
Thank you.
a thought I kind of remembered as I was getting ready to hop on with you,
Mhm.
you made a big life choice, a change, pretty much like right before this cycle. And I'll let you share that choice. But what I remember you telling me is a lot of the energy and the womb work that we had done had really connected you back to your intuition, which I think is so important for us to be in touch with as women, especially on our fertility journey. And I know that you had said, like, if this was in the past, you would have been making the more quote unquote logical decision, but instead you
Mhm.
went with your intuition. So, what was that big life change?
So that would be changing jobs, but not just changing jobs, going from, working in the office every day to taking a fully remote position.
Mm.
And so absolutely, I would have stayed with the logical side prior to all of this and would have not even looked at a remote work job. But in my job in the office, I did have some opportunities to work from home on occasion. And I found that I was so much more relaxed when I was working from home. I also, as you know, track my blood pressure, and my blood pressure readings were way in a way more healthy range when I was working from home. And so leaning into that and just listening to my gut on it was like, okay, this is not what you would normally do, but this seems like the right choice. So I accepted the position, and I didn't start in the role until I think it was days after I found out I was pregnant. But I think definitely just work leaning toward that and going toward that definitely played a part in this as well.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, you described some physical changes that you could feel in your body, but like I can only imagine it just felt like a huge weight off your shoulders and like a sigh of relief. And like in my mind, I just picture kind of like constriction and clenching your body, and then it's just like a release. And that's just so good for your stress and your body. And I feel like it puts you in a position more apt to be able to receive, right? Like more open.
Mhm.
So yeah, I was so happy for you when you made that change because in my old job, working 12 hours in a retail pharmacy, like when I
Mm.
think about those days, like, oh my gosh, like I was in total fight or flight just every day working. And because we did conceive when I was still working in retail pharmacy, and it's almost like, wow, I don't even know how that happened. So I'd love to really just wrap up and have you share any other lessons that you learned from your journey. Did it change your relationship with your husband and yourself too? Like anything new that you like either reconnected to or strengthened about yourself?
Absolutely. I would say pretty quickly it changed the relationship I have with my husband, probably, for the better. I mean, as two young people that are going into this thinking it's going to be quick and easy. We both had to work through and deal with some of the frustrations that we both had around it and the insecurities around it, really. And I think helped in a way. I'm glad that we had that time in hindsight. At the time, it was really hard, but in hindsight, just because it helped us build, I think, a good foundation of where we want to be when the time came, which is now here, that we are pregnant. And as far as myself, I would say it just brought me back into a center with myself, right? All of the work that I've done through it and that confidence in myself, believing in myself and the choices that I make. Yeah, I would say. And probably one of the biggest lessons would be to advocate for myself as far as like working with that doctor that brushed me off. Like, and then I did end up, talking with my PCP, but maybe I wouldn't next time, I wouldn't wait so long and I would really push for, no, we really need to look into this or something like that. But yeah, I would say those are the biggest things for me.
I love it. Amazing. And all things that you guys can take forward with you as you're parenting, because I can tell you that there are going to be some ups and downs and struggles, and you'll be able to kind of navigate them in a much more secure place because I feel like you used the perfect word, insecurity. That's
Mhm.
huge when you're struggling, I think. Yeah, just the perfect word. So, if there's anyone listening right now who's been struggling, do you have any words of wisdom or encouragement that you would like to share?
Keep trying, don't give up on yourself. Don't put that pressure on yourself, even though I know that's so hard. And I did do that for so long, right up until the end when I did get pregnant. I feel like that's when I had stopped pressuring myself. It was like, whatever happens, happens. I'm okay either way. And I hope that my story is inspiring for anyone that's listening, because for me, I didn't know anyone, that had a short luteal phase, or anyone that had, you know, changed a diet. I had no idea how much a change in diet could affect it. So I just hope this helps someone.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dori, for coming on and just being open and vulnerable to share your story because it is certainly inspiring. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Katie, for having.
Thank you so much for tuning in to the Rising into Mindful Motherhood podcast. If this episode resonated with you or gave you an aha moment, stop what you're doing right now and write a review. This simple act of kindness helps me get this podcast out to connect with as many women as I possibly can. I also have a special offer. If you send me a screenshot of your review, I will take $250 off one of my premium coaching containers. Let me know what resonated with you the most and why. So connect with me in my free Facebook community or tag me on Instagram. You'll find both listed below. Thanks again from the bottom of my heart for tuning in to this episode, and I'll see you next time.